Kathy Freeman. Kathy Freeman. Focus question. Who is Kathy Freeman and why is she a role model for people all over the world? Introduction. At the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney, Australia, the whole world watched as Kathy Freeman won the gold medal in the 400-meter race. More than 100,000 Australians cheered when she crossed the finish line as she jogged her victory lap. She wore both the Australian flag and the Aboriginal flag. The flag of the Aboriginal people of Australia wrapped around her shoulders. It was the first time that the Aboriginal flag has been carried at the Olympic Games, and it became an important moment in Australia's history. Freeman was the first Aboriginal Australian to win an Olympic gold medal in an individual competition. She became an inspiration of Australian Aboriginal people and a role model for people all over the world. Kathy's early life. Catherine Freeman was born in Mackay, Queensland, Australia on February 16, 1973. She was one of 5 children. Both her parents were Aboriginal people. Her mother, Cecilia, was of the Kuku-Yanagi people. Her father, Norman, was one of the Biriguba. When Norman left the family when Freeman was 5 years old, and Cecilia later married a man named Bruce Barber. Barber became Freeman's stepfather and her first coach. Australian Aboriginal peoples. The indigenous peoples of Australia are made up of 2 groups, the Aboriginal peoples of the mainland and the Torres Strait Islanders, who live on a group of islands north of Australia. Aboriginal people were the first human beings to live on the mainland of Australia. There are about 500 distinct groups of Aboriginal people, each with their own unique language and traditions. Indigenous people make up about 3% of Australia's population today. Kathy started running at a very young age. She won her first race when she was just 8 years old. By the age of 14, she already held the nation titles in the 100, and 200 and 400 meter sprints. Kathy won scholarships to 2 schools in Queensland, Fairholme College and Currambin International School. She often felt out of place at Fairholme, though the school was far away from her home and there were very few other Aboriginal students there. She eventually left to attend Currambin instead. At Currambin, Kathy trained under a professional coach for the first time. She helped prepare her for her first great victory in 1990. At the age of 16, Kathy won a gold medal as part of the 400 x 100 meter relay team at the 1890 Commonwealth Games. The Commonwealth Games is an international multi-sport event in which more than 70 teams from different nations and territories compete. Kathy was the first Aboriginal person to win a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games. That year, she was voted Young Australian of the Year, an award given to a young Australian citizen who is considered to be a role model by the nation Australia Day Council. It was one of the nation's most important awards. Becoming a role model. While attending college, Kathy Freeman took courses in Australian history and politics. She learned about the British invasion and colonization of Australia that began in 1788 and the genocide of our Aboriginal peoples. Freeman's own grandmother had been part of the stolen generations, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children who were forcibly taken from their families between 1910 and 1970. The Australian government sent the children to boarding schools where they were forced to adopt white Australian culture. They weren't allowed to speak their own languages or practice their traditions. It was part of the government's effort to eliminate Indigenous peoples that erased their cultures and ways of life. Many children were adopted by white families and never saw their own families again. Freeman herself said she was often made to feel ashamed of her Aboriginal heritage as a child. She didn't want other Aboriginal children to feel the way she had. As Freeman learned about the history of her people, she became more and more determined to both represent them and to be a role model for them. At the 1994 Commonwealth Games, Freeman won gold medals in the 100 and 400-meter races. As she took her victory lap, she carried both the Australian flag and the Aboriginal flag. The act angered some Indigenous Australians who saw it was a form of protest. For Freeman, it was a way to show pride in her heritage and acknowledge the injustice the ancestors faced. She was also bringing attention to the racism Aboriginal people continue to experience. During the 1996 Olympic Games, Freeman won a silver medal in the 400-meter race. International and Olympic committees' rules kept Freeman from carrying the Aboriginal flag during her victory lap. Instead, she wore a tiny version of the flag on a shoe. After the Games, Freeman took 2 months away from training to travel around Australia, visiting schools and meeting Aboriginal children. Freeman believes her success brought a feeling of dignity and pride to Aboriginal people. 2 years later, in 1998, Freeman was named Australian of the Year. Carrying the flag. The Aboriginal flag became an official flag of Australia in 1995, after the first time Freeman carried it with her on her victory lap. In 2000, the Olympic Games were held in Sydney, Australia. Freeman took first place in the 400-meter race, winning the gold medal. During her victory lap, Freeman once again wrapped both Australia's national flag and the Aboriginal flag around her shoulders. It was a risk to do so, because it was against the rules for an athlete to carry any flag other than their country's national flag. Freeman was warned that breaking the rule could result in her being disqualified. The Aboriginal flag. The Australian Aboriginal flag was designed by an artist named Harold Thomas. The top half of the flag is black and the lower half is red. In the center of the flag is a yellow circle. Each of these colors has a meaning. The black represents the Aboriginal people. The red represents the red earth and the Aboriginal people's relationship to the land. The yellow circle represents the sun. The flag was first flown on National Aboriginal Day in 1971. Freeman risked being disqualified by carrying the Aboriginal flag, but the risk proved to be worthwhile. She wasn't qualified, and the Australian crowd cheered as she completed her victory lap with both flags around her shoulders. For many Australians, the 2 flags tied together represented unity between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. Freeman herself became a symbol of the reconciliation effort. What is reconciliation? The effort to create better relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in Australia, which began more than 30 years ago, is known as the reconciliation effort. People who support the reconciliation want all Australians to understand and respect Indigenous cultures and experiences. They want equal rights for Indigenous people. They also want non-Indigenous people to acknowledge the harmful treatment of Indigenous people in the past and to help ensure that they will not be treated that way again. The goal of reconciliation is real unity between all Australians. After retirement, in 2001, Freeman was awarded the Medal of the Order to Australia, an award given to Australian citizens for outstanding achievements. 2 years later, in 2003, Freeman retired from running. After retiring, Freeman dedicated a lot of her time to charity work and addressing Aboriginal issues. Since the colonization of Australia, there has been significant inequality between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people in Australia. Even today, racism fails Aboriginal people from having the same employment and educational opportunities as non-Aboriginal people. Because of these, around 30% of Aboriginal people live in poverty. In 2007, Freeman started the Kathy Freeman Foundation. The organization works with elders in remote indigenous children. It aims to provide indigenous children with the same opportunities as non-indigenous children in Australia. Conclusion. Freeman wanted to show Australia and the world that Aboriginal people deserve respect and dignity. She wanted Indigenous people, especially children, to know what they are capable of and to feel pride in their heritage. During her career, Freeman brought attention to the mistreatment of Indigenous people in Australia, and she continues to support their fight for equality today. Long after winning the Olympic gold medal, Freeman